Okay, all right. Well, we're back again. Today is Sunday, March the 22nd, and you hear Miss Addie barking. I've left the door open a little bit so that she can come in and out because I am at home. And if I don't, she'll scratch at the door, whine, and cry. And you're going to be able to maybe hear noises in the background because that is because I'm at home. So just keep that in mind that you will be hearing some other noises. But today is Sunday and I am at home and I'm finishing chapter 7. And this is lecture 4 that we're doing today, lecture 4. Okay, I am going to, I believe, start, and it may be a little bit of review, I'm not quite sure, but we're going to talk a little bit about reading and writing a little bit more. And according to Bernstein, in his research in 1989, the most noticeable and dramatic increase in metalinguistic awareness occurs between the ages of 5 and 8. And it continues into adulthood, just like many things that we've talked about. There is a progression. One skill builds on top of another skill. And in the development of reading and writing and metalinguistics, it's the very same concept. We're working on progress as we age and as we go through our development in these areas. As the child ages, they begin to understand those 5 areas of language much better. And we know that those 5 areas include phonology, morphology, semantics, syntax, and pragmatics. And that's exactly what you've written your paper over with the child that you've done your activity with. I want to point out to you that metalinguistics and the development is related to cognition and the intellectual capacity, scholastic achievement, how you do academically, your reading, environment. It makes up a whole host of skills to get to this metalinguistic development. The metalinguistic development is what tells us if a sentence doesn't sound right, if a word's been left out, if the word is incorrect. It's your metalinguistic ability that tells you something's wrong. You may not be able to correct it, but it does tell you if something isn't quite right. And you picked that up when you were doing your language analysis. You picked that up as you were working with the child. Because I have read about 20 of the projects so far, and many of you have picked up that a child has omitted the past tense or plurals. You've picked up on that. We've talked about phonological awareness quite a bit, and we're going to touch on it a little bit again because it is so important in the child's ability to read. It is that prerequisite for reading for sure. And it's how the child realizes that sounds and syllables make up words. Sounds and syllables make up words. It's definitely our phonological awareness. It's how we manipulate the units, the syllables of a word in order to decipher and decode what the word is. There have been lots of studies, lots of research on phonological awareness in preschool and kindergarten age children, and it definitely predicts their reading ability in later elementary and high school grades. The skill that they have developed, that foundation that gets laid, that definitely will predict their success with, those skills as they get into the higher grades. In phonological awareness, it develops over time, And if you don't have the foundation, if you don't have the earlier skills in kindergarten, first grade, you can't expect that third grader to read well if they haven't had the foundation. In order to be able to read and understand and work on stories, you've got to have, especially for narratives, you've got to have that ability of phonological awareness, being able to spell words, decode words. A child also has to have, and let me see if I can find my notes for that, which I had them, but I don't see them right now. Alliteration. And alliteration is simply the child's use of a single word or a single sound in words. She sells seashells by the seashore. That's an example of alliteration. Now remember, with that particular sample, it's not an S word. If it was an S word, we'd say sea sells by the seashore. And that isn't how we say that. So be careful when you're talking about a child's development of the phonological system. S is not the initial sound, it's an SH. So make sure that when a child is giving you an explanation for alliteration, that you're using the correct sound. Also, keep in mind, sometimes there's a hard C, a soft C. In the word chaos, CHOAS, it's not a C, it's a ch. The word she is sh. The word thumb is not a T, it is a TH. So keep that in mind. And so we know that the child should be able to recognize and generate some alliteration. This came from research by Gilbertson and Bramlett in 1998. On page 304 in your textbook, if I haven't already pointed that out to you, and let me find that in the text. One more page. The progression of phonological awareness is rhyming words, counting sounds and segmenting sounds into words, counting sounds and segmenting sounds in longer and more complex words, determining letter and sound correspondence in words, segmenting words that represent a variety of syllable shapes, manipulating sounds in words to omit the first or last sound or to redistribute sounds in words, and using knowledge of sounds to spell words. That's the hierarchy in phonological awareness. That can be found on page 304 in your textbook. Okay, as we've said before, when their vocabulary explodes and expands, the child, and they begin to read, the child gains knowledge of those morphemes and how the morphemes work for them and how they use them in spelling, and certainly in reading. It advances their ability to spell and read. We know that younger children, when they develop those basic morphemes, they can express themselves more clearly, so you know what they're talking about. So you can reduce some frustration from them. Humans are born genetically wired to speak. And we talked about that when we were doing the nativist and the behaviorist. We are wired to speak, but we're not wired to read and to write. The skills that you have, that you've gained for reading and writing, come more from the environment and the exposure that you've had in the environment to literacy, the reading material at home, working on the ABCs. That's environmental. You certainly have to have the genetic capacity to learn that. There's no doubt about that. But environmentally, we have a greater influence for reading and for writing. But the the impetus behind speaking is definitely genetic. When the child looks at printed language, now they have a relationship between that printed word and the spoken word. Oh, you said car. This is what car looks like if I spell it. So we're beginning to tie those skills together. The child is exposed to the relationship between printed words and the spoken word when we're looking at printed language. Phonics. Oh, we've all had that lesson in phonics. And this allows the child to link the sounds to letter symbols and combining them to make words. And some of the rules behind phonics. Our language is very abstract. We use these abstract symbols, which is why the child has to be taught what those symbols are, that sound letter association. And it happens in all languages. The alphabet is different in Greek, in the Greek language, for example. And so we have to learn those rules, and that's how we link things together. Phonics requires direct teaching. You're teaching some of those rules. And there are sometimes little rhymes that the teacher has taught children to remember the rules for vowels and what the vowel does to the consonant and that sort of thing. So the direct teaching occurs, and it's usually in kindergarten or the first grade. I hope to do some review of the standards, and I do have some of that information, and I hope certainly that I can pull it again. I'm not so sure that I did, because you'll see that the standards, the Indiana standards, directly are in line with the child's ability to read, spell, write. There are standards that the schools have to follow. And hopefully I can pull some of that information for you. I had it before I left the office. I'm not sure I have it right now, but that's okay. That wasn't in the text. That was just something I was adding. Reading fluency. We're not talking, when I say reading fluency, about the child's stuttering, whether they do, whether they don't. When a child hesitates, when we say, when we repeat something as we're trying to think about what we want to say, that's not stuttering. That's word finding. Or maybe you have forgotten part of what you want to say, so there's hesitation. But that is not true stuttering. That's the fluency of your ability to communicate verbally, or it's reading fluency. If the child has trouble with reading fluency, and that may include their accuracy, it could include speed of reading, and definitely it will impact negatively the comprehension. If it takes the child a long time to decode many words in a sentence, they may not even know what they've read, because all of their concentration, all of their thinking, the cognitive energy and power that they have to use is on decoding. So they may have no idea what they've read. So now let's put that into a paragraph. And I remember in school being evaluated on reading and comprehension, and the reading fluency directly impacts the child's ability to comprehend what they've read. We can enhance vocabulary through printed materials focusing on root words, prefixes, suffixes, other morphological attributes, a definition, new words, associated meanings, anything that we can do to help that child's vocabulary expand and grow. It's like using your other senses when you're studying. If you have to write something and say it, if you have to say it 3 times, if you have to read it as you say it and you say it out loud, it's the child's way of getting that information in. And repetition is a big part of that too, as well. We need to teach children how to summarize what they've read. We could read back the directions to make a robot. We can read them, but I'm not so sure I could summarize what I've read because I don't know the vocabulary. It's foreign information. I've never seen it before. So we need to teach children how to summarize what they've read. Reading development occurs, here again, across several years in a continuous, seamless process. We're building on skills. Now, let's talk about the types of readers that we have. There are 3 types of readers. The first one is the emergent reader. The second one is the developing reader. And the third one is the independent reader. So as you can well imagine, emergent reader, emerging, the child really isn't reading just yet. They know that books have stories, and they know that they like those stories. They know that some of the words in the book stay the same. For example, Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. The repetition is how children learn. And so they know that some of the words stay the same in the books. We have pictures to help us. And children maybe aren't really paying as much attention to the words that you're reading as much as the pictures to get the context information. Emergent readers display more interest in trying to read without assistance. They try. And this is when you see the child take their baby doll, their stuffed animal, and they set it up in the chair, and they go get a book, and they pretend that they're mommy or the teacher, and they read the story to the doll or the bear. That's pretend play, which is a skill that is important, but also they know that this is the setup. This is the situation. So they like to pretend to read. As we're reading a story, sometimes they can predict what comes next. They can discuss things about the story. They can tell you what might happen. They can tell you why the boy got in trouble. It's predicting. It's problem solving. It's a what if. Those are all nice abstract thinking kinds of concepts. So they're capable of doing that. Now it depends on the listening, of course, but they are capable of doing that. They continue to recognize words, and this is between 30 and 48 months. So these are little ones. But they love to pretend to read. We're choosing books that are of interest to them. Let's say the child is in the early stages of potty training. There are books that go through the stages of the child learning to potty train. There are books about bullies. There are books about my grandma died. There are books about holidays. And we use those to supplement maybe what we're teaching in the classroom. Being proud of yourself. Why it's important to brush your teeth. So those stories give us a moral, or they supplement something that we're trying to teach. Also, a good feature for Dr. Seuss is the rhythm, the repetition, the rhythm. Those are concepts, those are features, strategies of the story to help children remember. So these are emergent readers. Now let's talk about the developing reader. There's reading for meaning. We have letter sound association to predict or confirm the words that we think we know. We're talking about books that have life experiences. The little bit that they know about the alphabet and that letter sound association helps them to figure out unfamiliar words. And they're excited about doing that. And the focus is heavily on phonological awareness and decoding. They're developing some comprehension and the purpose for reading. All the more reason that we set the stage for reading very, very early. Having the literacy material at home, going to the library, the child seeing you read, the child seeing mom and dad read. The child may sit down and pick up the newspaper like daddy and open it up and turn the pages and may even have dad's facial expression and may point to a picture. That's setting the stage. And the vocabulary also matches the vocabulary that they should have at a certain time, and it coincides with their vocabulary expanding. That is the developing reader. Now, the independent reader, they read on their own and they're getting pleasure from reading. They want to read, they like to read. Reading takes us to other places that we've never been before. They've become more confident and competent in their skills. They begin to process a wide variety of reading materials such as poetry and maybe idioms, trying to understand idioms and metaphors and similes. And definitely there is joy in that reading. It helps with facilitating higher level thinking for learning new information and for solving problems, because in the stories, they solve problems. Now think about the reading material and the vocabulary in their academic subjects. We know in third grade, they're into being more independent. Their science books are more detailed, and definitely the vocabulary in science, social studies, words that they've never heard before. So certainly it coincides with developmentally where the child should be, and then bringing in these more difficult subjects. In the earlier grades, we're learning to read. By the time we get to that third grade, we're reading to learn. And they're to be more independent in their ability to learn. Reading and writing are closely related, but they're different facets of a single process. They definitely are related, but they are different processes. But I will tell you, if you have a child who is delayed in language, more than likely there's going to be a delay in spelling and writing. The more the child reads, this makes sense. According to Fields and Spangler in their research in 1995, the more the child reads, the more they know about writing. And the more they write, the more they know about reading. They go together. Okay, the tie that binds reading and writing together is the meaning. When we write, we use, when we speak, let me start there. When we speak, we're using more casual language. When we talk to our friends, our language is different. When we speak to our parents, our language is different. But when we're writing, for example, in the projects that you've just worked on, you are using more professional language. You don't want it to be casual. There's a higher level of vocabulary that you're using, and children learn that as well. Our kiddos with writing, that's why when we get to school and they're supposed to write their name, because that's what you put on your paper. I can always tell if a child has not had much experience with crayons and markers, because what they'll do is they'll hold it like this. And that's not how we hold a writing utensil. Or they'll put it between their fingers like this. They do funny things, maybe like this. But we know that typically this is the way that we do this. This is typically the way that we hold the writing utensil. But I can tell when I see that child pick it up for the first time. I can tell. I can tell that they have not had much experience. Now, I understand why children don't have much experience, because parents don't want them writing on the walls. They don't want them writing on furniture. They don't want them writing on fabric, on themselves, on the dog. But you have to sit with them. There has to be some structured activities with children with writing utensils. I also know in some of the experiences that I've had with kids in diagnostics, particularly, when they see me with my clipboard and my paper and my pen and I'm writing, they want my pen because they want to write too. And I let them. It doesn't make any difference if I have a checklist or I have paper. I let them write. It's okay. I can still read my notes, but they want to. They're interested. There's a strong desire to make marks and do some early writing, they call it. And that sets the stage for the child's ability to write more. Sorry, guys, but here's the baby. She's at my feet wanting up here. If they're, and I've lost my train of thought. Let's see. I said they display a strong desire to write even before they enter school. You going to school, baby? Are you going to go to school? Huh? Say hi to the kids. Hi. 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 So it's children need to have those experiences with markers and crayons. They learn to make circles. They like to imitate. They learn to make squares. And then when we get into school, you have lines on the paper. And as you learn to form those letters, print those letters, you start at the line, you go down to the line sometimes. And so it helps them stay between those lines. It helps them to make the letters correctly. We have uppercase, lowercase. They have to learn the difference between the two. We don't want them writing up. We don't want them writing down. We want them to go from left to right orientation. That's how we read. That's how we write. And I can see where children who haven't had exposure in their environment to those things, how they struggle, how they are behind. But hopefully with gentle teaching, they would be able to catch up. This was by Dyson 1983 research, and it makes sense. The physical process of moving the fingers and hands to put letters on paper is closely related to drawing, in that writing and drawing are both processes of symbolization. And so, we don't think about that it's important for them to do that. It's important for them to paint in this direction. You maybe had an easel at home and mom put up that big tablet of paper and you had paints. Or maybe you remember doing that in preschool or kindergarten and you're going in this direction. Well, now you have to put it on paper. And it's a little bit different. Some of our kiddos with learning disabilities have trouble doing that. Then we go from print to cursive. When you print, your lead of the pencil is on the paper and you go down. Then you might lift the pencil and start at the top again. We're going to make a B. And you make I'm not sure which direction is right for you, but you go back to the top, you loop, and then you release. your hand and pencil from the paper. When you're doing a T, top to bottom, left to right. There's directionality involved in formulating those letters as well. Directionality, top to bottom, left to right. When we make the letter B, we start at the top and we come down. When we make those little half circles, we don't start at the bottom and go up. Typically, we're taught to go to the top and then come down. But children who haven't had some exposure early to using those fine motor skills with coloring, crayons, and markers, they do struggle a little bit. She'll probably be asleep here in just a minute. Yeah, she's getting sleepy. She's supposed to be on my lap. And that's why I left that door open a little bit, because I knew that she would be wanting to come in here. Okay, kindergarten. We're going to continue a little bit with writing. By the end of kindergarten, teachers expect children to be doing the following: writing their full name, print both upper and lowercase letters, and they're also to use invented and conventional spellings of several words. So we give them make-up words. We give them silly words. Bo, bo, boo, whatever. And so we want them to be able to hear those sounds and be able to write them. Ritchie, who did research in 2008, studied the writing and spelling skills of children in kindergarten, and she found that by the end of kindergarten, children should demonstrate the following: writing many alphabet letters, and we know that they have difficulty with visually similar letters. The G's, the Q's could be backwards, and we know that they do reverse B's and D's, letters such as that. They have difficulty with words that are not used frequently. And that's maybe situational for some children. Some children who go to the zoo a lot, and they've had experiences with the zoo, a zebra, a hippopotamus, some of those animal names, lemurs, they may know, other children may not. But the less occurring words are more difficult to spell and to recognize. They're substituting upper and lowercase letters. They have more difficulty with vowels than consonants. And here's a good example: the word please. I remember in one of River's papers, he spelled it P-L-E-S-E. P-L-E-S-E. Well, he's spelling it phonetically, but I'm surprised he didn't put a Z. Please, please. We don't say police. That almost sounds like police. But he knew, he'd probably had exposure to writing that word previously. It wasn't a new word. And what he could remember when he sounded it out was P-L-E-S-E. Not bad. And we can figure it out in context, what he was trying to say. There was another word that he spelled. Tell me what this is. P-O-E-L-P-E. P-O-E-L-P-E. It's the word people. Not too bad. Really not too bad. Let's see if there are any others that I noticed. The word, okay, you'll know what this one is. A-N-W-E-R. He forgot the S, answer, A-N-S-W-E-R. But they're close enough. He's listening. He's got that auditory feedback loop that he's listening to himself. He's listened to other people, and those are words that are in his vocabulary. But you can see why the vowels would be difficult. The consonants are much easier. They have more success with initial consonants followed by final consonants. Boat. Now, I just said they have trouble with vowels, but they have, it's easier less difficulty with initial and final consonants. It makes sense. Boat. And they may spell it B-O-T, obviously. The child typically learns to write his first name first. Then he's going to learn to write mom, dad, the dog's name, what he calls grandma, any other pets that he has, maybe his best friend's name, his sister's name. Maybe if they vacation every year, he'll know the name of where they go, those kinds of things. But they're words that are familiar to him. They're in his environment. Many times when children come in for therapy, I'll ask the parent, do you have a pet? And what's the name? And we'll work on that in therapy. Let's say the dog's name is Carrie. I was trying to think of a K sounds develop early. And if the child is going to be using the dog's name as Carrie, then I'm going to work on Carrie. I'm going to work on Carrie because I know the child will be practicing that word a lot because in his environment, the dog is there, he likes the dog, and they say the dog's name a lot. His mom says it, dad says it, siblings say it, he says it, and that's a word that can be easily reinforced by the parent as well. And as children learn to write their name and the names of other people, then it becomes a need. They want to do it. They have a real need to do it. Spelling, and we know that it's in association with writing, has stages as well. There are 4 stages involved in progressively more sophisticated spelling. There's a pre-phonemic stage, before the spelling. Early phonemic stage, letter name stage, and a transitional stage. In the pre-phonemic stage, the child doesn't understand that longer words have more letters. They haven't learned that. Words are just words. Those are just abstract symbols on a piece of paper. They know that sounds are strung together, that words are strung together, and they say something because mommy's looking at those words and saying them to me. But the letter association isn't really there just yet. It's not strong. That's the pre-phonemic. We're building up to early phonemic stage. In the early phonemic stage, they're beginning to get it. They're beginning to understand spelling and sounds say certain things. They'll attend to the first letter of the word, and if they've learned the word ball, every B word, if they don't know it, they'll guess it as ball. And you'll also see the child look at the pictures in the book to try and help them figure out what that word might be. But they are attending to the first letter of the word to represent the entire word. They may not try and sound it out or decode it at that point. And they'll pick up the last sound, but the middle, it's not so good. The letter name stage, they're beginning to represent vowels and consonants with letters whose names sound like the speech they represent. There's not much in that letter name stage. You can pretty much figure out what they're doing with the letters. Transitional stage, the child attempts several spelling strategies, like in please, P-L-E-Z-E, P-L-E-S-E. The Z we're not using a lot. In zoo, zebra, yes. But we don't have many words where we're using that Z. Now, you may have a child in your class whose name is Zoe. Xander is usually with an X, but you say it as a Z. Zoom, zip, zipper. We can work on those words. We can make a what I call well, it just left me, a list of words that are common with a Z, and we can work on those in the classroom for sure. He may remember how he once saw the word spelled in print. I'm sure that River did. I know he's seen the word please, Please, but he couldn't quite remember, but he knows he's close. He might put the S, he might put the Z, and eventually you just have to put something. They may try and apply some rules that they've been taught. The mistakes that they make, we know that they're trying to generalize some strategies. They're trying to sound it out. In the text, let me look at that, page 317. I woke her up, didn't I? Oh, her life is so hard. Page 317, table 7.3, it will give you the spelling development in elementary school. Let me see if there's anything that I want to add to what we've just talked about. I've got a glare here. In the pre-phonemic, another way to learn this and review it, letters are strung together without regard to letter-sound correspondence. They don't have that skill, that ability just yet. And that's in the age range of 3 to 4. The early phonemic, first letter used alone. First letter matches the first sound. No vowels are appearing, and that's 4 to 6 years. So that's the kindergarten, first grade. Letter name, both consonants and vowels are used and letters match their names. That is a big skill. So certainly that's probably all that they can handle. Transitional, recall of some printed words, application of some rules with overgeneralization, and that's in 5 to 8 years. And they would be in the second grade by that time. So if you want to refer to a different way to study that, look at page 317, table 7.3, and that's in the PowerPoint as well. Child experiments with spelling. River and I used to have a, what did we call it? Our secret password. And the word was Topabi. And I had him spell it. And it wasn't too hard. To-o-o-a-b. And he could spell that one pretty easily. And it was kind of our code word. And we'd walk by one another and we'd go, Topabi. Then after a while, he lost interest in Topabi. I took him a little treasure box, and we had little treasury things in it, and Topabi was the secret word if we wanted to go play with the treasure box. So the child is experimenting with spelling. We do the same thing. Okay, if I'm trying to think about how to spell a word, sometimes I have to write it down. I have to look at it. I have to use the sensory system of vision. Doesn't look right. Then I'll spell it another way. And, oh, okay, yeah, that, you know, the first one was right. When we go with the word step, stepping, does that have 2 P's? Cancel, cancellation, are there 2 L's? And sometimes we just automatically do that. That's automatic learning that we have. And if we stop and think about it, we can do it. But we have to look at it sometimes. And we use those strategies all the time, just like the kids. They're still making mistakes, but their mistakes are making more sense to you, for sure. This point, we have many inconsistencies between the way words are spelled and the way they are spoken. For example, the word chaos that I said, circus. You'd think there was an S at the beginning. So circus sometimes is one. So there are inconsistencies. We do funny things with words. We certainly do. Hearhere. I certainly understand why some of our English language learners struggle because we do funny things with words. We've talked about the steps and the progression in reading. We've talked about steps and the progression in spelling, and there are also steps that you follow in writing. And we've all experienced those steps in school. There are 4 stages that are reviewed on page 319, table 7.4. I don't know if that's anything that I really want to stress. In preparation for writing, the child will copy letters, copying, and they're practicing letters and words. They're consolidating strings of words using spoken vocabulary and grammar differentiation. Writing is more sophisticated than spoken grammar. And when they're integrating the writing, the child expresses mood, attitude, and personal style and creativity. That's the progression. I'm not going to ask you that on the test, though, so don't worry about that. But the point is, there are steps and progressions that children go through. Let's see. Learning, this is a skill that I see in our students many times in writing progress reports. They've worked with a child and now it's the end of the semester and they have to pull together a report for the parent. And learning to revise written text is difficult. I usually will try and give a sample, and if we are able to get your project papers back to you, you'll see where I've written suggestions. Haven't necessarily taken points off for writing more professionally. I may have taken points off if your syntax was off. But the revision part can be very difficult. It places a heavy demand on cognition, working memory, linguistic, and metalinguistic knowledge. You have to self-monitor. I go back, I shouldn't say every time, but I go back and reread an email because I leave words out, because my brain put it in, but my hand didn't. And so self-monitoring and rereading are definitely very important to making sure that you get your message across to someone. Okay, that is the rest of chapter 7 in the PowerPoint, but still let me see if I can find, humor me here for just a minute. Yeah, can you talk to them? Let them see you talk. I teach you to talk all the time, don't I? You're the baby. I could have left it on my desk. But in essence, what the standards are saying is, like in preschool or kindergarten, you're teaching the alphabet, letter sound association, and you get to first grade and you're focusing on putting words together maybe. And then the skills after the first grade, many times, are you're just refining those skills. But the state gives us standards for teaching and the education that students are supposed to have. And if you go into the public school, and you maybe have already been exposed to that, you maybe already know that. But I had some information about the standards, and I was going to share that with you, but it doesn't look like I have it, so I can't do it. Okay, now what's going to happen is, hopefully I'm going to be able to upload this to YouTube today. We're just about finished. I apologize for the quality of this video. I'm at home and it's kind of grainy and there are some shadows. I do realize that, and the light kind of fades and then it gets darker, and I'm not really sure why. I think the quality was better at work, but now what's going to happen is I'm going to try and upload this to YouTube, and then if I'm successful, then I may go ahead and make lecture 5, which will be the review. And then my hope is maybe tomorrow when I go into the office, I will look at the exam and see if I want to change any of the questions, that sort of thing, and put that test up on Canvas. And then I've got to contact Canvas and find out how to do the Respondus Monitor. And I do have information somewhere about Respondus Monitor, but that allows you to hook into a monitoring system for Canvas so that you can take the exam and I don't have to worry about you looking up answers. And I hate that, and I hope I can make that work. So I'm thinking that tomorrow's Monday, and then you also will still have the opportunity to email questions to me that I can answer. You can always text them to me because everybody should have my phone number. And then I'm thinking maybe the beginning of the next week that the test will be put up on Canvas and I'll have everything in place, but certainly I will let you know that. Tomorrow is the 23rd and the project was due. You may already know that essentially the university has been just shut down. There will be only maybe 2 or 3 people in the building tomorrow. I'm one of them. And some of you have contacted me about getting your paper to me, and I've discussed that with you. Remember, you can mail that to me, 1613 West Riverside. My office number is 236 Muncie, 47306 is the zip. I'm in the Health Professions Building. I've received about 20, so I'm anticipating more. I won't be able to see anybody, and if you are dropping that off to me tomorrow, you come into the parking lot off of Dick Street, drive up to the Circle Drive and stop. And if you can let me know when you think you might be coming, I'll try and come out and get those reports. Otherwise, you're going to have to mail them to me. Okay? Let me know if you have concerns. Addie and I are going to sign off. You going to say goodbye? You going to say bye-bye? No, you're not going bye-bye. You going to say bye-bye? Guess not. She's not talking today. Okay, I'm going to have to shift her, and I'm going to turn it off, and let me know if you have needs. Bye.